Greetings, YouTubers. It's me, Wayman29, and I guess this could go out to live videoers also, because I'll be posting it there. But over here on YouTube, this is a reply on baptism, going out to Jesus Freak 777. Is baptism necessary? And Jesus Freak ends up going into the New Testament ideas on baptism. He explains it a little bit in light of the Baptist theology concerning the issue. I believe it's the Baptist theology. He might believe in full immersion or non-immersion. I'm not sure. I watched part of the video and then finished watching it a little bit later. However, he explained it rather well from the point of view of his belief system. However, what's happening is we take New Testament theology, modern day theology, and impress it upon the text and what we're taught in our belief systems and impress it on the text, and we come to conclusions that may or may not been correct at the time they were formulated. Jesus Freak goes on and talks about in Mark some text variances. The one he talks about is in Mark is the least of an issue, rather than the idea of Christ being baptized by John the Baptist and the voice from heaven and the dove, which would call into question the Trinity. Matthew 28:19, Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptize them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Matthew 28:19. Matthew 3:6, and they were baptized by him in the river Jordan, confessing their sins. So what we got to do to put it in perspective, where did it first start? Baptism, where does it first start? Is the idea of cleaning the body. Gilgamesh, as early as the old Babylonian, cleaned and did things. And in the ancient Near Eastern literature, you find people cleaning before they go into the temple of the gods. So it's not a New Testament idea. What's interesting is many Christians, they don't read the Dead Sea Scrolls or the Gnostic texts. In the Dead Sea Scrolls, which had a which had an influence on the New Testament texts and ideas as it crossed over. It's this period of the Dead Sea Scrolls that the Protestant Christians refer to as the 400 silent years. They weren't silent. Jewish literature was being produced, theology was being produced. It never stopped for 400 years. So the finding of the Dead Sea Scrolls allowed us to put in perspective the texts in that area and see the progression of Jewish literature. And it goes all the way to the end. The whole is Jewish literature. And when you read the Damascus Scroll and the Community Scroll, in there it lays down laws concerning baptism, which influenced Christ, John the Baptist, because they seemingly follow the same law codes provided or written about by the Essenes, who may or may not have been at Qumran. Archaeological ideas keeps changing. Now they think Qumran was a place where pottery production was made, and not maybe a monastery at all. However, there are still some who cling to the idea of the monastery. Also, the Dead Sea Scrolls may not have been written only by the Essenes, but many third-party apocalyptic groups and groups or cults from that time period. So you have a mix mash of things. So if you take maybe even James, there's a great book I'm trying to get into now. It's really hard reading. It's called The Dead Sea Scrolls Uncovered. It has more footnotes than it does text. At any rate, which I find really annoying. If you're going to put large amounts of footnotes in the book, you might as well just write it as a text. Anyways, in there, he links up. He has a theory about even James being the teacher of righteousness described in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and how it influenced the Gnostic texts and the New Testament writings. And you see it there. You have the Last Supper I talked about before in one of my other videos, Composing Jesus, where all those things were already set in place even before Christianity got started. At any rate, Jesus Freak gives the Baptist interpretation. You have the non-immersionist view, you have the Lutheran doctrine, and then you have baptismal regeneration, baptism for the dead, baptism of fire, baptism of Holy Spirit, and infant baptism. So depending on your belief system, it could be any of these three. I know in Hindu, they believe that submerging yourself in the Ganga River would be healing. I don't know about spiritual. There might have been some kind of connection. And in the Old Testament, as you remember, Naaman, it was mandated that it be the Jordan. He could not just go into any river. It had to be the Jordan. And he complained about it. Finally, he came over and did it, and poof, his leprosy's gone. Now, the danger here is supposing that baptism is some kind of magic link, maybe sympathic magic or practical magic, where water on top of you would cleanse you from all the horrible deeds that supposedly would happen to you, or original sin. However, a lot of times it's just used as an induction into the belief system. It's I'm going to favor, because I was brought up with evangelical Free Methodist ideas. My grandfather was that. My family currently follows that. So all my life it was pounded in my little brain that it's just a symbol. And the idea of sanctification is the baptism by the Holy Spirit, which is talked about by the Apostle Paul. But baptism done by John the Baptist at the earliest is not the earliest. It happened before, and the ideas of it where outward immersion would do something to induct you into this belief system, or allow you to be what people would call saved, which I find pretty interesting, because you could be a child molester and nobody would know it and be baptized, but still, because of your pedophilic behavior, you would still not be cured, or that would still not be removed from you with just a simple sprinkling. Now, the interesting thing is the baptism for the dead, which everybody nails the Mormons for. However, the Apostle Paul talks about it because it was practiced in his day. This is from the International Standard Bible Encyclopedia. I'm still having this beer here because I decided to relax. It's my day off. So here I am, Christian, talking about baptism, one of the holiest rites, while I'm drinking a beer. Very interesting indeed. At any rate, the first arguments rest upon the central fact of Christianity that the other two are appeals to the consistency of the Corinthians, and Paul himself, wherever baptism for the dead meant, it was, in Paul's opinion, as real, valid, and legitimate as a premise, continually baptized on behalf of others who were at the time dead, with a view to benefiting them in the resurrection. But if there was no resurrection, what shall thus be accomplished, and why do they do it? The only legitimate reference is to a practice of survivors allowing themselves to be baptized on behalf of believing friends who had died without baptism. Tertullian believed that Paul referred to a custom of vicarious baptism. There is evidence that the early church knew such a practice. Epiphanius, Epiphanius, mentions a tradition that the custom ordained among the Corinthians, and Chrysostom, Chrysostom, states that it prevailed among the Marcionites. So, maybe the Mormons had it right. They're baptizing people in the name of Jewish people to convert them to Mormonism in the afterlife, which angered a lot of people, and Hillary Clinton asked them to stop. So, my father, who went to Bible school and is religious, he's not a minister or anything, however, he practiced as a layman, he's a treasurer, just got baptized with my cousin, and it was a ritual, induction, Protestant view, and an outward sign, they say, of an inward working. So it doesn't erase anything, it's just a testimony that you agree to do these things and you are inducted. So the idea of infant baptism, baptism of the Holy Spirit, it's all very important, but its origins say that if you're going to be inducted into a certain belief system that demands it, then you got to follow the rules. You can't bring a football to a basketball game. However, nowadays most Protestant denominations blow it off. And a lot of times, they just go with either sanctification, which is called baptism by the Holy Spirit, or they do the sprinkling. However, some are still hardliners and do the full immersion. However, the earliest forms of baptism was just cleaning yourself so you'd be clean to go into the house of Yahweh, and also immersion carried out by certain cults and early Christian ideas from the Dead Sea Scrolls, which by John the Baptist carried over into Christianity. Depends on the belief system, on what importance and how important it is to get in. Just like the once saved, always saved idea, certain things are mandated, other things are not, depending on the belief system. So hopefully, gave you a little bit of background. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. If not, you can write it in the comments and correct me. But thanks, Jesus Freak. It was a really interesting topic.